Looking through the area of Jerusalem, you will see something incredible. The geography of Israel reveals the name of God. Considering what is now happening in Israel, this is like God screaming to the world, "This land belongs to me." And this is not just any name of God, but the most holy name that Jewish people don't even say, not to mispronounce it. Now, if this appeared in a random place, it would still be incredible because it's Israel. But it appeared in a very specific place, next to Bet El. And Beit El means from Hebrew, the house of God. And Beit El is located between Jerusalem and Shiloh. So, in this place where we have the story of the Jacob's ladder, which goes up to heaven, we have God announcing his most holy name through the geography of Israel. Isn't that amazing? Just understanding what happened in this place, what it's called, and what God is revealing through the geography creates chills down your spine. But this is not the first time God announces his name in a spectacular way in Israel. If we look at the topography of Jerusalem, the most holy city, we will also see the name of God. Here's how. The three main valleys in Jerusalem form the Hebrew letter Shin. This is a letter you will often see in Israel on the doorposts and gates, because this letter is the first letter in the title of God, Shaddai. So once again, we have a letter that represents the name of God, El Shaddai, embedded in the topography of Jerusalem.
Also he built altars in the house of the Lord, whereof the Lord had said, In Jerusalem shall my name be forever.
But go ye now into my place which was in Shiloh, where I set my name at the first.
So we do have two references in the Bible that tell us that God does put his name in specific places. We had Jerusalem, of course, and Shiloh. Shiloh was even before Jerusalem, where the tabernacle was set. And between those two important biblically places, Jerusalem and Shiloh, we have the appearance of the most holy word in the Hebrew language, the most holy name of God. And this is located just next to the city of Beit El, the house of God. This is just mind-blowing. It is not only amazing, but it also should be a warning to the world, because the world is about to force Israel to divide the land, to divide Eretz Israel, given to the chosen people by God. Now just look where all of those three places are located. Shiloh and Beit El are located in the so-called West Bank, and Jerusalem is located just outside of it. But actually, East Jerusalem, so the most holy place on earth where the Temple Mount is located, according to the world, should be given back to the Arabs. This is the decision of the world. And when Israel is pressured more and more by the world to give back the land that was given to them by God, then God gives a strong warning by proclaiming his name. God is saying, this land belongs to me, and it's called Judea and Samaria, and not the West Bank. And the miracle that happened when Israel was created. The 20th century changed the balance of power in Europe. The countries of Central Europe and the Ottoman Empire saw the 20th century as an opportunity to expand their power. And the means by which they decided it will happen was war. The price of this horrible war was 40 million deaths. The alliance of the German and Ottoman Empire failed, and their empires disintegrated. Those changes were also essential for the creation of Israel in the Holy Land after 2,000 years. The British troops defeated the Ottoman army, and on the 11th of December 1917, the British General Allenby with his troops entered Jerusalem. Now, there is a funny story about how this happened. You see, everybody was waiting for this glorious moment. You have to realize that since the Crusaders, no Christian force was in Jerusalem. Everybody was very excited. And the city of Jerusalem was also waiting just inside the old city next to the Jaffa Gate. The cook of the British army entered first. And as he entered the old city, everybody thought it's General Allenby. So orchestra started playing music, the mayor was getting ready to give the keys, but then they found out it's the cook. And as everybody looked at the cook asked, I'm sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to know if we have eggs for the general. So, the eggs, of course, were there, and soon after, Allenby entered the gate. But that was not the end of the surprises. Allenby was approaching the gate on his horse, and everybody thought he's gonna come as a great victor, you know, in the style of Alexander the Great, of Pompey, something like that. But then, something very unexpected happens. The general gets down from his horse and starts walking. This was very unexpected. Everybody started looking at him. What is he doing? Why? This is not according to the plan. Later on, when he was asked why he did that, he said, "How can I come on a horse when my master came on a donkey?" Quite incredible. And those were exciting times for the Christian world, when once again Christians were ruling the Holy City. The English newspapers were reporting this as a Christmas gift, because Christmas was just about to happen. But to understand what happens next, we actually need to go back in time before World War I. Allow me to introduce you to Chaim Weizmann, another Jewish man that had a tremendous impact on the creation of Israel. Mr. Weizmann was a British man and the world's famous chemist. He invented acetone, which became an essential component of the smokeless powder, which helped the British Empire to win the war. Mr. Weizmann's impact on the creation of Israel is best illustrated by his interaction with Arthur Balfour, a representative of the right-wing party in Britain. Mr. Balfour, at the beginning of his political career, was not very sympathetic towards the Jews. He could be even called an anti-Semite, but at that time it was quite popular. Only later in his career he started supporting the idea of the creation of the nation of Israel. Of course, he's best well known for the Balfour Declaration, of which we will talk later. So Lord Balfour didn't have a lot of love for the Jewish people in the beginning, but you know, he wanted to somehow manage this Jewish vote that was important for the Conservative Party. And at that time, the British came up with this excellent idea of creating a space for the Jewish people in Uganda, in Africa. And at that time, Lord Balfour said to Chaim Weizmann, well, look, we have this colony, we have many colonies, so we can give you one. It's not the best, but look at Israel right now. It's also not looking good. So you have swamps there, but eventually you will be able to transform that, create something, and it will be nice. It's warm there, like in Israel. So, you should take it, because there's nothing else we can offer you. And then Chaim Weizmann said, with all due respect, Mr. Balfour, but this is unacceptable. Imagine, it's something like somebody would say to you, we'll give you Paris instead of London. Mr. Balfour looked at him and said, but it's not the same. We have London. And then Weizmann said, well, it's not our fault that in London you had pigs running in the fields when we had our kingdom in the land of Israel. What is interesting that 10 years after that, in 1917, the same person, Mr. Balfour, no longer an anti-Semite, signs the so-called Balfour Declaration. At that time, Mr. Balfour is already the Foreign Minister of Great Britain, and this document makes his name famous forever. And this is also 2,000 years since a major power in the world acknowledges the right of the Jewish people to have a home. This is huge. Of course, the British were quite smart, because a home for the Jewish people, as it is written in this document, can mean many things. It doesn't necessarily have to mean the state of Israel. They are very crafty in creating documents and then working around them. They know what words to use. Nevertheless, this was something, and this gave hope to the Jewish people. And remember what happens. A few months later, the British enter Jerusalem and they start ruling the Holy Land. Perfect timing, isn't it? After World War I, the whole Near East is under the control of the British and the French, the ones that won World War I. Because the British ruled the territory that today is Israel, they were in power, in the position of giving this land to whoever they wished. And it looked like this is great for the Jewish people. But then the British changed their mind. So we did discuss the influence of Chaim Weizmann on the ruling class in England. Because he was a genius chemist, he provided a lot of value for the Great Britain, and he used this value of his to influence the leaders of Great Britain. A person who he also influenced was the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Lloyd George. Mr. George was raised on the Bible, and the things of the Bible were very dear to him. And Weizmann quickly saw that and started to talk with George in a very particular way. Instead of talking about the politics, about the land of Palestine, he switched to using biblical terms. He was telling the stories of Rebecca, of Abraham, of all the cities in biblical Israel, Shechem, Jerusalem, Hebron. So he was using all those biblical terms, and he was seeing an emotional reaction from George Lloyd, for whom all those terms were very important and very dear to his heart. I think the best way to illustrate how this love towards Israel grew in the heart of George Lloyd is by one story. The day the war ended, Weizmann was supposed to meet Lloyd in his office. And the meeting was being delayed. Weizmann didn't know what's happening, so he patiently waited. Finally, George invited Weizmann to his office, and Weizmann sees that Lloyd's face is all covered with tears. He was reading the Psalms all morning. And then he said to Weizmann, out of all this evil of this World War I, the only good thing that happened was a way for Israel to be created. So, to sum up, after World War I, things were finally looking positive for the Jewish people. Since the 1st century AD, the Jewish people were all over the world. There wasn't really a country, a region in the world where the Jewish people were not present. And we did talk in my last episode how this was prophesied by God, that He will scatter them all over the world. Now, in the 19th and 20th century, we are finally seeing the return of the Jewish people to the Holy Land, which again was prophesied by God that it will happen even before they entered the land for the first time. And after World War I, it is much easier for the Jewish people to return to the land, thanks to the Balfour Declaration we talked about, and thanks to the favor in general of the British Empire. So after World War I, the Jews took advantage of this favor and started returning to the Holy Land. And during this time, we had several of those aliyahs. Aliyah means going up, because when you return to Jerusalem, Jerusalem is located on mountains, so you have to go up. And this is the period when the population of the land of Israel increased significantly. As we discussed during the Ottoman Empire, this was a desert, nobody lived there really. There was a high tax on trees, so nobody wanted to live there because it was a desert. But as the Jews started coming to this region, the economy of this place was also growing, because people were building houses, people were employing workers. Also, the Arabs started migrating to this place because they found jobs there, and there was hope in this region, finally. And as this region became more and more attractive, more and more Arabs started saying, why should we give this to the Jews? We should take it, it's our. And this is really when the favor of Great Britain started to end, because British were very concerned with the Arab nations that were much larger of a population than the Jewish people, and they had oil. Just to comment on what I said in the beginning, when the name of God is appearing at Bet-El, it's visible in Jerusalem, it's visible in Israel. When this is happening and the world says, we need to divide this land, God is not happy. Israel is pressured more and more to divide this land. But guess what? Even when all the nations will go against Israel, God will not abandon His nation, because He has sworn on His name that the name of Israel will never be wiped out. Thank you so much for your attention. I wish you all the best. Shalom. Regained control of the old city of Jerusalem after 2,000 years of exile.
ברגע זה אנו עוברים את שער האריות. אנחנו בתוך העיר העתיקה. הר הבית הקדוש. ואני נוגע באבני הכותל המערבי.
The results of the Six-Day War were a realization of many prayers of the Jewish people, who once again could pray in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem, and next to the Temple Mount. But the Six-Day War was a culmination of many events that shook the world in the 20th century. It was also a powerful symbolism referring to the ancient prophecy about the Lion of Judah. In today's episode, we will discuss the events that led up to this incredible moment when the Jewish people, after 2,000 years, could once again say, Jerusalem is ours. Before World War II, Europe had the biggest Jewish population in the world, and most of them were living in Eastern Europe. And almost half of this population in Eastern Europe lived in Poland. Can you imagine this? 3 million Jewish people lived in Poland. Poland, of course, was one of the first countries attacked by Nazi Germany. Poland was divided between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union under the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. But the German expansion did not stop there, and soon more and more Europe was controlled by Nazi Germany. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union annexed the Baltic states in 1940. But as the German Empire grew, it was getting more and more obvious that the attack on the Soviet Union is unstoppable. And in fact, this attack did happen in 1941, which is known as the Operation Barbarossa. Initially, it was a great success for the German military that quickly controlled vast amounts of territory. The German army attacked from 3 different directions, totally catching the Soviet Union army by surprise, causing huge amounts of destruction. But what followed the German army was even more terrifying. Behind the army lines went the killing squads of Einsatzgruppen that killed over 1.5 million Jewish people by bullets. But that was not the end of the massacre of the Jewish people. Soon after the attack on the Soviet Union, the Nazi Germany created concentration camps and death camps. Most of the death camps were in Poland. Just look at this terrifying statistic. Almost half of the Jewish people killed during World War II were killed in 4 death camps in Poland: Auschwitz, Treblinka, Belzec, and Sobibor. German ambition to re-establish the world without the Jewish people failed. The forces of the Alliance and the Soviet Union raced to Berlin to control as much of Europe as possible. The world was divided between the Soviet Union, the United States, and Great Britain. But what was left of this world was horrifying. Here you can see the pictures of Warsaw in Poland after the Ghetto and Warsaw Uprising. But besides the rebels, you also had thousands of Jewish refugees that nobody wanted to take in. How is this possible? Why the world did not want to take the Jewish people? To answer this question, we have to go back in history. In 1938, so 1 year before the war, in a beautiful resort in France, we had the Evian Conference, where 32 countries, some of the most powerful countries in the world, met to decide what will happen to the Jewish people that were denied their citizenship in Germany and thrown away from their homes. And guess how many countries decided to take in Jewish refugees? Exactly one, a very powerful country of the Dominican Republic. Out of all those powerful countries, only a small, tiny country of the Dominican Republic decided to immediately take as much as 100,000 Jewish refugees. Astonishing. And it seems it wasn't detrimental for the Dominican Republic, because today it is an exclusive vacation resort, while its neighbor, which is on the same island, is one of the poorest countries in the world. A huge difference there. So nobody wanted to take in the Jewish people, but that was not the end of the problems, because Great Britain created a document which basically limited the amount of Jewish people that could go to their homeland, where today's Israel is. And because of this policy of the white paper created by Great Britain, some stories from World War II are very, very dramatic. For example, the story of the Stuma ship with 800 Jewish refugees escaping the Holocaust from Romania. On a barely swimming ship, they traveled to Turkey, where they wanted to continue their journey to their homeland, which then was controlled by Great Britain. However, Great Britain denied them visas, and Turkey denied them to disembark on their shores. The ship, without fuel, was left drifting on the Black Sea, which later was shot by a torpedo coming from a Russian submarine. Almost everybody died. But that's just one of many stories from World War II, and some were even more dramatic, where the Jewish people were denied access and ended up in death camps. But when the world did not want to take in the Jewish people, and when the Jewish people were denied access to their homeland, something even more sinister was happening in Germany. In a beautiful resort next to Berlin, high German officials were gathered by Reinhard Heydrich to ensure the final solution to the Jewish question. This is where the plan of extermination of the Jewish people was planned. Once Germany attacked the Soviet Union and controlled the majority of the territories where the Jewish people lived, it was time to realize their great ambition to exterminate the Jewish people. Indeed, it was a diabolical plan, but it resembled an ancient desire to rebel against God, to rebel against His plan of the redemption of the world that will happen through the nation of Israel. What is important to remember, however, is that the German extermination of the Jewish people was not just a random thing they did, but it was well documented and planned. According to the German ideology, to achieve this goal, you have to get rid of this people that corrupt both physically and spiritually this new being that they wanted to create. And in that sense, Germany, Nazi Germany, wanted to return to the times before Christianity, before the establishment of the Judeo-Christian values, because according to them, those values made people weak, and it was an obstacle to the creation of the superhuman. Now, obviously, this is a very complex topic, and we can get back to it another time.